Satu Savia.
Wait a second. Give it a blow. Make a big noise. How about now?
Yeah.
Now it's working. Yeah, hiya. I wanted to start with a tiny story. As my name is Satu, it means saga, and a fairy tale in English. So, 18 years ago, I gave birth to twin boys, Ilmari and Eino. 2 years after that, I got my first job in a picture collection in the National Museum of Finland. As you know, in the museums we have a lot of boxes full of photos and everything nice. And one day I was just opening a box and I found there a photo. It was like synchronizing my life. There were small 2 boys, twins, lying in a bed, and the parents there around them and looking at them. It was a strange photo, and I went to my supervisor, a great lady who knows everything, and she looked at that and said, "The boys are dead." That was my first touch to post-mortem photos, which I'm going to talk to you about today. So I'm an art historian. I'm working in a Helsinki City Museum in Finland. I did this. So, about this day's agenda, I'm going to tell about post-mortem photographs and are they difficult heritage. So first I start with some tradition, just in general, and background, and then about the tradition also, and what was the post-mortem photos meaning as a part of life 100 years ago in Finland. Then I want to close up a bit to tell you about why, for me, these photos are important. So the post-mortem photos might be quite known as a Victorian tradition, but I will just briefly tell about it in Scandinavia and in Finland. Well, it's a practice photograph in the recently deceased. These photographs of deceased loved ones were a normal part of American and European culture in 18th and 20th centuries. In the late 18th and early 19th centuries, the post-mortem photographs of departed were photographed and memorialized mostly in the studio. Post-mortem photographs were often given as a carte de visite, visit cards, to relatives. In Finland, it seems to be more popular to take photographs at home, not in studio. Finland has a long tradition of group photographs. Their funeral attendees stand behind and around the deceased, who is in the open coffin. These post-mortem photographs do not only help by grieving, but they often represented the only visual memory of the deceased. Sometimes post-mortem photograph was the only photograph of a dead family member. So in the background was, of course, the high mortality. Nowadays, 70% of deaths in Finland take place in a hospital or in a similar healthcare institutions. Things dies these days older than ever, At last year, most of the men who died were in an age of 75 years and women at 82 years old. But the situation was dramatically different 100 years ago. Other women and men lived normally under 50 years. Families were big. They were around 5 or 6 children, but it was also common that at least 2 children died before they were 5 years old. So death was a quite common visitor in a Finnish society. First I give you to one post-mortem photo in a form of counter visit. It's an unknown baby by Daniel Nyblin, the father of Finnish photography. Then another photo or object to tell you about the high mortality of childhood, which was a common feature. This object you can see in Helsinki City Museum's permanent exhibition. This is children of Rosenström family. The family lost 4 children in a short period in the late 18th century, and they all died before they turned 4 years. With this object in our museum, we want to say that sometimes post-mortem photo was the first and the only photograph of a child. Went to the other kind of photo, post-mortem photo. So here is a photo of Lyytikäinen family. They are posing there around the family member, lady Johanna Lyytikäinen. And as you can see, it gives a lot of information about the tradition of how to mourn. The coffin, the flowers, the costumes. Also maybe it is outside in the winter time. These kind of things. It's a kind of a very informative photo. Then the post-mortem photos as part of life 100 years ago. So Finnish culture was 100 years ago, of course, Western and Lutheran. That was kind of a more part of life concretely. Families were taking care of seniors at home, and caring of the deceased ones was also done by your family. No any hospitals, no any other people between you and your deceased loved one. So to see death human was natural. I want to ask you, not in a proper way, but anyway, how many of you have seen a deaf person live? Really many, yes. Most of us have seen them only in photos of media, but if you have an opportunity to do it, I recommend it. It brings you very close to your life. And that memento mori, that you have to remember that. One thing is, it's true, but we won't be here forever. But it was more normal 100 years ago, for example, to the kids and to the families to see this happening. So, of course, when you died at home, you were prepared to the funeral at home. It was most of the time work of the women who were experts of taking care of the deceased before the funeral. So it was not a taboo. To take and have a post-mortem photo was not unpleasant. And the photo was meant to be for a comfort. Its meaning was to ease the pain of the loved ones, loss of the loved ones. This is to be photographed as beautiful as possible. some of the photos of small children, they look like they are sleeping. They were supposed to look like they were having their last dream. So I will, in the next slide, show you some more examples of this tradition. Here's a photo again. And then there is a young girl lying in her coffin at home. She has special flowers in her hand and flowers around her head. Then a studio photo. So this is definitely taken in the studio. So there's a little boy called Palermo and his parents. Then about the relationship of postmodern photos to contemporary life. How many of you recognize this photo? All. Yeah. It was nearly everywhere in year 2015 in the media. It's really powerful, I think, this image. Do you agree? But does it feel unpleasant, confusing, and do you actually don't want to look it at all? It wakens all kind of feelings, maybe guilt, sadness, and weakness. The name of the boy was Alan Kurdi, and it's Reuter's photo. Here's another. Wait a second. Sorry. Would you like to help me? I want to go backwards. There we go. Great. Yeah. I start here. Yes. And here's the picture I was going to tell about. So this is also a picture of a decent child. But do you think this is also a powerful photo? But does it feel unpleasant and confusing? A baby in the coffin might be, for some of us, really sad. It is something wrong if the child dies so young. So since late 1960s, media images of the dead started to be part of photojournalism. Media has made death and photographs of deceased part of our everyday life. Yet, most of us are less comfortable with the idea of photographing postmortem pictures for private use. Death and funeral organizing have been moved to the hands of professionals in hospitals and funeral homes. In our times, it feels odd if you plan to take your dead family member to a studio, a photographer, or call a photographer at home to take a photo of deceased family member one. So I want to, in my last slide, to tell you why I think these photos are important. So these kind of photos, the post-mortem photos, are just tiny minority of the collections of the museums. But tiny collection, I think they are important and should not be hidden anywhere. I think post-mortem photographs are knowledge and example of one tradition not known by many. And I think if museum wishes to influence the public's understanding of history, it can hide difficult issues as post-mortem photographs. I think it's museum's responsibility to give a proper context to these photos. Without a historic context of these photographs, a deeper understanding of them likely will not happen. I think post-mortem photos, I feel more comfortable thinking about death. As psychiatrist John Hinton says, Western people do not fear death, but dying. I will now end my presentation and wish I had encouraged you to study and also publish all difficult heritage as post-mortem photos.